What's up, what's up, what's up? King Alliance here. Today we are going over the front big brake kit install. The Stoptech BBK that I got, it's probably been about 2 months, 2.5 months ago now. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't be telling you that, but yeah, I installed it probably about 6 weeks ago. So I've been driving around on it for some time. It's working, good condition, things are good. The rebuild went completely fine. The install, not the easiest thing in the world. Definitely had some complications along the way. The whole process was easy, but there was definitely some hurdles. You're gonna be seeing that. I'm gonna be going over that a little bit throughout the video. Am I happy I bought it used? Absolutely, 100%. The only thing that I really noticed from buying it used as compared to buying it brand new was paint was a little faded. The dust boots were torn, so I just had to get a new rebuild kit from Ohio Performance, which awesome company, by the way. I just want to point that out. If you need to rebuild your brake kit, definitely get in contact with Ohio Performance. When I was installing the boots, I actually ended up tearing one. Let them know I tore it, and they said, hey, thanks for being honest. Here's a couple more. Make sure you do it right this time. No, they didn't say that, but they sent it out, and I just paid for shipping, which was like a couple pennies. No big deal. Thanks again for that. All right, so we're gonna start off, as you would imagine, taking off the front wheels, loosen up the lugs, taking off the lug caps with the Audi Performance clip tool. Make sure you loosen up the bolts decent amount before you lift the car up with the jack. Otherwise the wheel will spin and you'll have to lower it back down, do the whole thing all over again. With the jack, always make sure you're being safe. Don't ever just let the car sit on the jack. Make sure you put jack stands underneath there. Make sure the jack is able and strong enough to lift the car, and the jack stands are also strong enough to hold the car. I have 3-ton jack stands here, easily enough. When you're doing it, of course, make sure that you look for the arrow underneath the side of the car. There's a little, it's very minute, but there's a little arrow there that you want to make sure that that's where the support of the jack stand is going to be. You don't want to have it further down or further up, otherwise you could damage the body. So once you get the wheel off, after some experience with the rear brakes, gotta get some WD-40 on there. Make sure you can loosen up the actual rotor. So here I just use a flathead screwdriver to remove the brake pad wear sensor from the front caliper and the brake pads. And I didn't have any issues with it not being attached. I didn't have any errors come up. I also have an OBD11 just in case I did have errors come up, I could clear them. So for the caliper bolts, you're going to need 13mm socket. There's 2 of them. It's probably a good idea to spray some PV Blaster WD-40 on there, help loosen them up a little bit. Just use a flathead screwdriver to help pry the caliper off. It's not going to be on there too hard after you get the bolts removed. You should just be able to wiggle it back and forth. And once you do that, you're going to place it on. I have it sitting on the rotor here, but better off if you get a box or a bucket to set it on in the back. That way it's out of the way, and that way you can keep the brake line connected without any issues going on. Carrier bolts are going to be 21mm. Just let you know what happened here. Now I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I don't have the footage of me just breaking stuff, trying to get the carrier bolts off. They were I'm pretty sure they were Loctite on there. They're also, I believe, stretch bolts. And they were just rusted on there to some extent to where I could not get them off. I used a jack and a ratchet to try to pull it off. Did not move, did not budge. I used a breaker bar. It was like a 3-foot bar. Did not work. So after about 2 hours of trying to get these things off, I just ended up taking it to my mechanic. He put a heat gun to them and got them right off. He just loosened them up for me. I took it back home, and here I am removing the carrier bolts. Easy breezy. I should just use some common sense and have that done right away, but you know, first try for everything, so you gotta be a little stubborn. You know, you can try and do it yourself and then realize you might need some help in the end. Then you want to just remove the rotor. When you're removing the rotor, that WD-40 is going to help loosen it up a little bit. Take a rubber mallet to it and hit it a couple times. It pops right off, no big deal. That's even with all the rust that I had on there. It really came off, no issues. Alright, so you can see on the two-piece rotor, the slotted vanes on the inside of the rotor. You want them working to help push air out, not pull air in. So when it's spinning, you don't want it catching air, you want it dispersing air. So if you have them open in the way that they're spinning, they're going to be catching air, and it's going to be slowing things down, causing resistance. But if they're facing away from the direction they're moving, it's going to be pushing air out from the center and away from the brakes and the rotors. So the slots on the rotor, you don't really want it mounted based on how the slots are. You want to make sure that the vanes are in the correct direction. As you can see here for the carriers, the item numbers on there, there's a 1 and a 2. The 1 I do believe is driver's side, and the 2 is passenger side. So just make sure when you're looking at your carriers, when you're installing them, that you have the right one on the right side. After you do that, you just want to mount the new carrier bolts, or the new carrier on there with the carrier bolts. Just use the 21mm socket. For the ST60 Stoptech caliber, it is a 6 piston. It is a little bit larger than the stock S4 front caliber. So the shield that is on the front, the caliber won't actually fit on without the shield being bent back just a little bit. Thankfully, it's not solid steel or anything like that, so you can just pull it back with your hand, just move it a little bit out of the way. Don't move it too much. You could possibly break it, but just test it out. Put the caliber on there, move it a little bit out of the way, make sure it's not touching it, and you'll be fine. I did not use a torque wrench here. I don't believe I had a torque wrench at this time. So I mounted it, tightened it up until it felt comfortable. That's not the safest thing to do. I'm not saying that that's what you should do. What I'm saying is you should get a torque wrench and you should find out what the specs are you should tighten it to, and tighten them to that spec. Once the carrier is mounted, put the caliber on the carrier and spin the rotor. If you can move the rotor freely, if you don't feel it touching anything, then that means the carrier is completely mounted on there, it's fully tightened, and the caliber is going to be perfectly fine mounted to that carrier. So after that, you want to take the caliber back off and you want to install the brake pads. Super easy process, they just slide right in. But before you put them on, you just want to get some brake lube. And also make sure when you're putting the brake lube on there that it's only touching part of the pad that is not the part of the brake pad that is not actually the pad itself, but what the pad is mounted to. So the back of it, you want to put it all over the back of that. You want to put it along the sides because that's pieces that's going to be moving back and forth in the caliber. So you want least resistance there. You don't want it getting caught or any drag, anything like that that might cause issues when you're braking. There, you don't want to install the pads if you have some of that brake lube on the pad face, because that's just going to not allow you to brake. It's just going to smoothly run right along the rotor, and no resistance means no braking, meaning you're not stopping. So just make sure to avoid touching any of that lube or your fingers that has the lube on it to the actual brake pad front. So after you coat the back of it and the sides, slide it right in and it's good. Do that for both sides of the caliber and make sure there's no wiggle room. The main thing is that they're just in there straight. So then Stoptech has the piece that bolts over top of where the brake pads are. That's used for pretty much tracking your car. So it allows you to remove this top piece with a couple bolts, remove your pads, put on track pads, and then replace for street pads. So I don't track my car yet. I plan on doing that someday soon, but the option's there. Another cool thing about the Stoptech big brake kit is that I believe it is the only brake kit that actually is a two-piece brake kit instead of it being a one-piece, where it's one solid piece. It makes it real strong and sturdy. Now the thing about that is you constantly have force coming in and bending it. So what the Stoptech engineers did is they actually designed it as a two-piece, so it allows some flex in the center of the caliber, causing less wear and less issues with the caliber long term. I'm not sure if it actually helps with compression of the pistons as well due to the flexibility there, but it definitely helps with the life of the caliber. Stoptech has a couple of these videos on their website, so if you want to find out more about it, just check out the Stoptech website, and they have a lot of great interviews with the engineers and the design process and how the calibers are made, the rotors are made, and their pads are made. Great company. Definitely happy with going with the big brake kit from Stoptech. So to put the cover for the brake pads on, you're going to need an Allen key. I think it's a 10mm Allen key. You need a flare spanner. You only want to use flare spanners for the brake lines. It allows it to wrap around the line, and then instead of it just being square with the bolt, it actually comes around the bolt, which helps a lot in preventing stripping of the bolt if you get to that point where you actually do strip it. Just don't ever get to that point. I have to say I did that, and it was not a good choice. I got 3 of the bleed valves open. The 4th one was literally the last thing I was waiting on. This was after I was frustrated because I couldn't get the carrier bolts off. So the last one I was trying to get off, couldn't do it, moving it, and ended up stripping the bolt. And that was after I did WD-40 and PV Blaster, all that stuff, and none of it was working. So dangerously, I drove to the same mechanic who loosened up the carrier bolt with my lines not completely bled, making sure I was using my slap shifter and staying below 30 miles an hour. Literally my brakes would work, but only when my foot was completely pressed to the floor. Thankfully the mechanic was roughly about 2 or 3 miles away, so it wasn't too far of a drive, but this is not what you want to do. If at all possible, avoid this mess. Just buy one of the sockets that allows you to cut into the bolt, pull it off, and if you want to, on the backup, have an extra bleed bolt. And I'm sure at this time my mechanic was asking me, why the hell are you doing this yourself? You should have just brought it to me and I would have done it for you. But hey, here I am, stubborn as can be. The The flare spanner, 11 millimeter, is for the brake line on the car. I believe it's the same size, or it might be a 9 millimeter for the bleed. Things that aren't absolutely necessary but definitely are helpful is I got a one-man bleeder bottle that just has a little magnetic cap, sticks right onto the rotor. You can attach it to the bleed valve, so that way when you're bleeding the brakes, it's not just falling out all over the ground. It's going very nicely into a little bottle, which allows you to dump it then. It also makes it easy to see when the air bubbles are completely removed from the line. The link down below will show you exactly where it's at on ECS. I got a Motive Euro power bleeder, which you just mount to where your brake fluid goes. Make sure it's secure. Put the brake fluid inside the container. Close the cap. Start to pump it up. You want to get to about 15 psi. That's going to allow a steady stream of brake fluid to flow through the system and push out any of the old brake fluid, and also help push out the air that's in the lines. Make sure that when you're doing this, it's not empty, because you're just going to end up pushing air into the lines, which is the last thing you really want to do. You're trying to remove the air. That's one of the forewarning things you just want to be careful about. Also, when you attach the one-man bleeder bottle, make sure that there's a little bit of brake fluid in there, because with the pushing of the fluid into the bottle, when you first start, it's actually going to cause a vacuum and it pulls some of that out. So if you have only air in there, it's going to suck air back into the line. But if you have the fluid in there, it'll help prevent that from happening. And I also say it's not a bad idea to have some Red Bull or some beer, whatever your best way of dealing with stress is. There's also some other things out there you can use that, you know, this, that, the next thing. But also make sure you're being careful. Alright, so once I remove the brake line from the car itself, there's going to be brake fluid dripping right away. So I have a box underneath there to help catch some of the brake fluid. The quicker, the better. But once you remove the line from the old caliper, just install the line from the steel line. Preferably it's a steel line from the Stoptech brakes. Install it, tighten it up as quickly as possible. After that's ran, also make sure that it runs the same route that the original brake line runs. There is a little rubber piece on the brake line that will clip right in. Once you can see that there's no brake fluid leaking from it, then that's when you want to make sure that you put some brake fluid in the Euro power bleeder, and you're going to start bleeding your brakes. So this is an easy one-man system to help push that fluid through. Found this to be a lot easier, a lot cleaner, a lot less stressful. These one-man bleeder bottles do fill up relatively quickly, but you shouldn't have to really worry about that. If it's still passing air, just make sure you close the valve in time, empty it out, put it back on, open the valve back up, and continue the process until there's no air running through the lines. Once you do that line, then you have to do the inside or the outside, whichever one you did first. Just do the opposite one. Make sure you have brake fluid in the power bleeder and start the process over again. You're going to do this for the 4 bleed valves, 2 on each front brake. After you do this, it's not a bad idea to check the rear brakes. Just bleed them real quick, make sure that there's no air that seeped into the lines going to the back of the car. When I did both of mine, I double checked the rears and there was no air whatsoever, but I'm not saying that that's a guarantee either. You want to just double check and make sure that there's no air in those lines. So once they're installed, sit back, admire your work, get a nice big grin on your face, because now you got some awesome brakes on the front of your car, and it's about time to go out and use them. So get your wheels back on there, do a cross pattern, make sure they're on there, install the caps back onto the lugs, lower your car and go enjoy it. Alright everyone, thanks a lot for coming and checking out the video this week. If you know something that I did not cover, I want to make sure to get that information out there so that somebody else is either making it easier for them or they're not going to have any issues with the install. Oh, still, I have not heard from the winner of the giveaway. If I haven't heard from them by the end of the week, I'm just going to do a new giveaway for somebody, and I'll let you know who it is. So make sure, check below, see who the winner is. If your name is listed there, make sure you get in contact with me so I can send you out some free goods, man. Come on, you know you want it. Yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Make sure you click subscribe, check out my other videos. I got a new video coming again soon. Super excited to get these videos out now. I got my camera back and I got a lot of things in the mail. I got a ton of products, man. Got a lot of work coming and I'm excited to post these new videos. So make sure you like the video, comment below if you have any questions, or if you just want to, say good job or say I did a bad job, whatever it is. This is King of Lions. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Until next time, peace. This is King of Lions.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for coming.
Peace.